Hey everybody, Lieutenant Joe here for Hope is Not a Tactic, the school safety and security show. So recently we have seen in the news in the state of Arkansas, a couple was hiking in a national or state park, and they came across a young man who, for some unknown reason, murdered them. And they were with their two little daughters. And apparently the story goes kind of like this. He confronted them. The mother ran away with the two little girls to hide them while the father interacted with this guy. The mother then came back to help the husband, and this guy, this young man, murdered the mother and father and took off. Well, he has been arrested, and what they found out is that this individual charged with the double murders is an active duty school teacher of young kids, young children, K through 5 kids. And when we learned about this guy, we're finding out that he passed all the background tests. His background investigation was done. No red flags. He worked in several districts, and there seemed to be no problem with the guy. But a guy that comes out of nowhere and murders two people with a knife is very concerning, obviously. So one of the things that I realized a while ago, when we hire people, when our organization, our school district, our police department, our company, when we hire people, we have to look beyond the application. We have to look at not just their skill sets for doing the work we need. That's very important. We also have to understand as best as we can who these people are as human beings, right? So we know right off the bat, one of the things that we all should understand for any of these kind of jobs, the only things that are really important is the person a person of good character? Are they a good and decent person? And can they do the work? No other factors should come in our minds. Nothing like race or religion or orientation. We don't worry about any of that stuff. Are they a good and decent person, and can they do the job? So what I found in law enforcement is that we were hiring lots and lots of officers, and 2, 3, 4 years down the road, we found that some of these officers were getting themselves into trouble, doing things that we didn't want them to do. They were detrimental to themselves and to others. And we look back and we saw the background was done, and we said, hey, look at how this background was done. Basically, we went by the application. We spoke to the 3 references in the application who all said he or she was awesome. And I realized we have to do more than that. So when it comes to pre-employment background investigations, I started to figure out what were the important traits of an individual that we wanted to have in these important societal kind of jobs, teachers, administrators, police officers. And there are lots of similar traits. So one of the things I did recently, because of this tragedy and trying to figure out how do we go forward? What can I help you with so that you can choose people who are not going to be involved like this? Can you imagine if this guy um, had hurt some kids in a classroom? Could you imagine that? And somebody said, what happened to his background? So I wrote this article here, Building a Safer and Stronger Classroom. All right. And it basically covers lots of these areas. It's a big article, but it's got lots of things. The traits and qualities of a classroom teacher, why rigorous pre-employment investigations are important, key components of an important investigation, that kind of stuff. And I kind of want to go over that. So I've created this article, which you can have. You email me, joe@pangarotraining.com, joe@pangarotraining.com, and I will get the article to you. It's also going to be published by Campus Safety Magazine. I don't know when, but coming up. It's also, if you go to integraservices.com and you look for our blogs, it'll be up there. So that's a company I do threat assessments with and staff training there, and Pangaro training. I do them both. So what we're looking at here, and I'm going to go over some of these things, but when I go back to the program that I teach, whether it's schools or businesses or law enforcement, there are areas of concern that we can all look at. And I have these areas of concern here for us to take a peek at. I have work habits, all these kind of things. I'm going to try and go over this. This might be a multi-part program because this is important. We're talking about hiring people that are going to do the right thing with our kids. So let's start out just with the article. Let's start covering some of that stuff. All right. So the recent tragic events in Arkansas tell us that this is important. We have to do. Going through that application though, when you look at the references and we go there and we say, well, Mary or Bob want to be a teacher, and what do people say? They put down their friends and they say, oh, Bob's excellent, Mary's excellent, they're great, awesome people. We have to go beyond that. And so here's some of the things in the article that I talked about. Right? Why rigorous pre-employment investigation matters. Right? We can't be in a position where we have to hire, so therefore we hire quickly. These things take time. And people always say, how long should it take to do a good background investigation? And the answer is simple, as long as it takes, right? So as long as it takes, you have to have trained investigators to do this. When I left law enforcement, and I went to a school district as a director of security. What I found is that our school districts need a lot of investigation for things, but a lot of times they pick a staff member, a teacher, an administrator, and say, okay, you're in charge of it, and they get little to no training on doing investigations. So they really need that kind of a skill. I do that. Watch these other videos, and you'll see. All right. So some key components. Obviously, the criminal history and the sex registry offense list is important. You don't want anybody who's got a problem that's already had a problem getting on the job. Somebody who's a sex offender registered or had a problem with they shouldn't have gotten involved with a kid, or maybe they didn't make the registry. Maybe it wasn't an indictable crime or a felony. We have to go deeper than that. So there's ways that we find out about people's histories, but that's important. Employment verification. Now, going back as far as you can is important to find out about these candidates for this job. So Brian Koberger, the murderer of the 4 kids in Idaho, we're now having staff members, people, his teachers and professors coming out because he was in a criminal investigation. He wanted a degree in conducting criminal investigations and all that. And they came out now, it turns out during the interview process when they were investigating the murders, and they said, this is the guy that we're going to hear about years from now that's going to be working at some university somewhere or some school, and he's going to stalk, harass, or attack students, right? So how do we spot that person, right? How do we go beyond the application and look at that? So understanding employment verification, we have to go back and ask. So as an example, when I do a background investigation and I want to see college transcripts and high school transcripts, why do we have that? Because a lot of who we are when we hit those ages 15, 16, 17, 18, we're starting to develop into who the people we are. We're not the final product that we're going to be later on in life, but a lot of the things that we do, we will start to see traits, our personality traits, how we interact with people and things we do early on. So I go and I would look at somebody's college transcripts, and I actually called or visited the professors that gave the candidate grades and the high school teachers. I spoke to them, to the counselors. Now, when you do that, you do a waiver. The candidate signs a waiver that says you can talk to these people. You give that person a waiver, you get the waiver, and you put it in the file. But I would go back and ask. So we had a young man that wanted to be a police officer, and he got C's and D's throughout college and throughout high school. And he was a great guy. I did his background. I thought the guy was a tremendous man. But when I called his high schools and his college professors, I said, guy got C's and D's. What does that tell you? Well, they're lazy, they're not very smart, they don't try very hard. Or, as I found out, he was very smart, he cared very much, he tried as hard as he could. He had an undiagnosed learning disability, and he wouldn't deal with it. His parents wouldn't deal with it. And he suffered. He passed classes, but he ended up with C's and D's. And in the long run, it hurt him in his law enforcement career. So my point is we can see these things if we know where to look. All right. So we want to look at that. Education and credential verification. Make sure you go back. Don't just take stuff that's written down. I know most of us know that. Reference interviews go beyond the people in the application. You might say something like, "Oh, that's great. I see your three references. Oh, one of them's your high school buddy, one's two people from college. Who else did you go to college with that's not written down here?" People say, "Oh, well, why do you want them? I gave you the three." I want to talk to other people, not just the ones they put down. You get the idea? All right. Social media and public conduct review. Everything that we do, especially younger people today, everything about them is on the internet, right? So I would suggest strongly that you have a waiver, and in the interview process or in the process of hiring, you have them give you your passwords or go online and let you see their profiles and all that kind of stuff. They might say no, but if you make that part of your criteria, that is part of our investigation, we're going to look, and then you find out they blanked everything out. Or when you're sitting there with them, you ask them, and well, I don't know if I want to go on and show you that. There's probably a reason that they don't want to show you. So that's a good thing to look at. Um, Boundary violation screenings identify any history of inappropriate relationships or conduct with students or other people. And this is where, when you talk to their friends, not just the people in the application, family members, you're going to interview neighbors where they grew up. What was this person like when they were a kid? What was this person like when they were in school? Go and try and find these other people. It's in depth to do this, and it takes time. But do you see how you start to find who a person is? All right. License status and disciplinary history. Driver's license tells us a lot about a person. All right. When we're in our car and we're all alone, we do what we do. If you got someone who's 16, 17, and 18, and they have speeding tickets or careless driving tickets or things like that, that happens to young people. They first get behind the wheel, and then you start to see they calm down. Maybe they had, a couple of tickets or whatever. When somebody gets into their 20s, 21, 23, 24, and they're still getting violations for things like that, that calls on their judgment. That calls on, what are they doing? Driving, getting a reckless driving or a DWI or some other kind of serious infraction behind the wheel of a car. That can give you indicators about how this person behaves. All right. Let's see. All right. So then I go into the traits of a quality classroom teacher. So we're going to look at the moral character, integrity and honesty, impartiality and trustworthiness, moral and ethical behavior. And what I suggest when you're doing this is that you have a binder. And when you look at each area, all right, so I look at moral character, impulse control, and safety awareness. I looked at stress tolerance and resilience, work habits and history, interpersonal skills, and intellectual based abilities. All right. So those areas and many more, when I start to get into the program here, and when we see in next episode, because it's definitely going to be a couple of episodes here. When we start to get into these things, you start to understand you want to have questions for each of these kinds of things. Tell me about a time you had a very stressful situation. How did you handle it? All right, that's a question. Tell me about a time you did something you regretted. What was that all about? But you want to have a list of questions for each area, each trait we're going to talk about, so that you can fully explore what people are all about. Right? Impulse control, safety awareness, very important. Right? Work habits. Right? Let's see. So I have a one-page hiring checklist that I put in this article, that tells you, here's the things you need to be looking at. And then when you make your final decision, how do you do that? How do you make your final decision? Do you have a matrix that has X amount of points on it? Do you have a matrix that tells you, if they answer these questions like this and they get a certain score, then you ask other questions? The point I'm making here is that these are very important positions that we in society entrust people to. We want quality individuals that you can be confident they're in the classroom with our children, and that we can trust them to be safe, have good judgment, do the right things to take care of our kids. So that's That's the first part. That's the first part of this episode. When we come back to part two, we're going to talk about moral character. What does that mean? And I list a whole bunch of things for everything. It's work habits, interaction with others, intellectually based abilities, and then we go through indicators of problems and what do certain answers mean. It's very, very in depth. And I keep saying that because it has to be. We want to make sure we choose good people. That young man that killed two people for no reason on a trail, we don't want people like that in the classroom with our children. And how do we figure that out? We do a good, solid pre-employment background investigation, and I'm here to help you to do that. All right, so I want to thank our sponsors, Blue 360 Media, RiotTint.com. They make excellent glazing for the windows and doors to keep bad people out. And MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com. In New Jersey, if you're a first responder, teacher, any state worker, you get a full health screening at no cost to you, and you find out if there's anything wrong so you can be healthy. All right, so this is part one. Make sure you take some notes. Again, if you want the article, I'll even give you the program. All right, it's joe@pangarotraining.com. Talk to you soon.